Disclaimer. This is just a friendly Taekook fanfiction story, pure imaginations of mine. Please do not take it seriously. Taehyung slid off the desk, his legs unsteady. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the almost kiss hanging between them like something tangible. "One of these days," Taehyung said softly, "you're not going to be able to stop. Get out." Taehyung left, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might break through his ribs. Behind him he heard something crash, probably Jungkook throwing a book or punching the desk. He smiled despite the ache in his chest. The Tuesday after the desk incident, Taehyung showed up at Jungkook's gym again. But this time he'd prepared. He'd bought new workout clothes, tight compression shorts that left little to the imagination and a loose tank top that showed off his arms and shoulders. He'd styled his hair just messy enough to look effortlessly attractive. And he'd timed his arrival perfectly to match Jungkook's leg day. "Fancy seeing you here, Hyung," Taehyung said brightly, approaching where Jungkook was setting up for squats. Jungkook's eyes raked over his outfit, his jaw tightening visibly. "What are you doing here?" "Working out. Same as you." Taehyung stretched his arms overhead, knowing exactly how the movement lifted his tank top, exposing his stomach. "Thought I'd make it a regular thing. You know, get healthy and all that. There are other gyms. But this one has the best equipment." Taehyung let his eyes travel deliberately over Jungkook's body. "And the best trainers." Jungkook turned away, adding more weight to the bar. "I'm not training you. I didn't ask you to." Taehyung moved to the leg press machine nearby, positioning himself where Jungkook would have a perfect view. "I can manage on my own." He started his workout, very aware of Jungkook's eyes on him between sets. The gym was relatively empty this late in the evening, just a few serious lifters scattered around, none paying them any attention. After 20 minutes, Taehyung approached Jungkook again. "Hyung, can you check my form? I think I'm doing these squats wrong." "Ask a trainer. But you're better than any trainer here." Taehyung moved closer, lowering his voice. "Please? I don't want to hurt myself." Jungkook's resistance crumbled with visible effort. "Fine. Show me." Taehyung positioned himself in front of the mirror, spreading his legs shoulder-width apart. Jungkook stood behind him, close enough that Taehyung could feel his presence like heat against his back. "Start the movement," Jungkook instructed, his voice clinical. Taehyung began to squat, going deeper than necessary, his ass pushing back against. Jungkook's hands clamped onto his hips, stopping him. "Not that deep. You'll strain your knees." But he didn't move his hands. Taehyung straightened slowly, Jungkook's hands staying on his hips, burning through the thin fabric of his shorts. In the mirror, their eyes met, and Taehyung saw the war happening behind Jungkook's carefully controlled expression. "Again?" Jungkook said roughly. "Slower this time." Taehyung descended into another squat, Jungkook's hands guiding his hips, adjusting the angle. The position was obscene, intimate, Jungkook's body close enough that Taehyung could feel him, could feel exactly how affected he was by this. "Like this?" Taehyung asked innocently, watching Jungkook's face in the mirror. "Yes." Jungkook's voice was strained. "Just like that." Taehyung pushed back slightly, deliberately, and heard Jungkook's sharp intake of breath. "Am I doing it right, Hyung?" "Taehyung," It was a warning. What? Taehyung straightened but didn't move away from Jungkook's hands. Instead, he turned around, bringing them face to face, Jungkook's hands now on his waist. Is something wrong? They were in public, surrounded by strangers, but the moment felt private, charged with electricity. Jungkook's eyes were dark, pupils blown wide, his careful control visibly fracturing. We should, Jungkook started. Should what? Taehyung stepped closer, close enough that their bodies were almost touching. Should stop? Should go home? Should finally admit what's happening here? Nothing is happening here. Another lie. Taehyung's hand came up to rest on Jungkook's chest. Your body tells the truth even when you won't. Jungkook caught his wrist, but this time he didn't push it away. Instead, he held it there, pressed against his racing heart. You need to stop pushing. Why? Because you might actually respond. Taehyung challenged. Because you might finally let yourself want what you want instead of what you think you should want? Something in Jungkook's expression shifted, darkened, and suddenly he was moving. His hand wrapped around Taehyung's wrist and he was pulling him. Walking quickly toward the back of the gym where the private training rooms were located. Hyung, Taehyung started, surprised. Jungkook didn't respond, just pushed open the door to an empty room and pulled Taehyung inside, slamming it shut behind them. The lock clicked with a finality that made Taehyung's heart race. The room was small, windowless, containing only a bench and some mats. Jungkook backed Taehyung against the wall, his hands on either side of his head, caging him in. You want to know what happens when I stop controlling myself? Jungkook's voice was rough, dangerous. You want to see what happens when you finally push me too far? Taehyung's breath came in short gasps. This was what he'd wanted, what he'd been pushing for, but now that it was happening, the intensity of it was almost overwhelming. Yes. You're sure? Yes. Jungkook's hand came up to cup his face, thumb tracing over his cheekbone, his jaw finally pressing against his lower lip. Last chance to take it back. Instead of answering, Taehyung bit down gently on Jungkook's thumb. Jungkook snapped. His mouth crashed against Taehyung's, the kiss brutal and desperate and nothing like the careful control he usually maintained. Taehyung gasped against his lips and Jungkook took advantage, deepening the kiss, swallowing every sound Taehyung made. It was everything. It was too much. It was not enough. Taehyung's hands fisted in Jungkook's shirt, pulling him closer, desperate to eliminate any space between them. Jungkook's hands were everywhere, tangling in his hair, gripping his waist, sliding under his tank top to feel bare skin. Heck, Jungkook breathed against his mouth. Heck, Taehyung. He kissed him again, harder, his hands now working at the hem of Taehyung's tank top, pushing it up. Taehyung raised his arms and Jungkook pulled it off in one swift motion, tossing it aside before his mouth found Taehyung's neck. Taehyung's head fell back against the wall, escaping his lips. Hyung. Shut up, Jungkook growled against his throat. Don't talk. Don't think. Just feel. His hands were on Taehyung's chest now, thumbs brushing over his, making him gasp. Then lower, fingers trailing over his abs, tracing the V of his hip bones above the waistband of his shorts. Taehyung was coming apart, every nerve ending on fire. This was Jungkook without his walls, without his control, and it was devastating in the best possible way. Jungkook's fingers hooked into the waistband of his shorts, starting to pull them down. And then he froze. Taehyung felt it the moment reality crashed back in. Jungkook's hands stilled, his body going rigid. When he pulled back, his eyes were wide, almost panicked. "No," Jungkook said, more to himself than to Taehyung. "No, no, no." He stepped back, running his hands through his hair, his chest heaving. "What am I? What are we?" "Jungkook." Taehyung reached for him. "Don't." Jungkook moved further away, putting space between them. "Don't touch me. I can't, we can't." The careful control was slamming back into place, and Taehyung could see it happening, could see Jungkook rebuilding his walls in real time. "This was a mistake," Jungkook said, his voice shaking. "A huge fucking mistake." "No, it wasn't." "Yes, it was." Jungkook's eyes were anguished. "You're my stepbrother, Taehyung. My responsibility. I'm supposed to." He stopped, shaking his head. "This can't happen. It won't happen again. Jungkook, please. Get dressed." Jungkook picked up Taehyung's discarded tank top and shoved it at him, not meeting his eyes. "We're leaving. Separately. And we're never speaking of this again. You can't just." "Yes, I can." Jungkook's voice was cold now, distant. The walls were fully back up. This was a lapse in judgment. It won't be repeated. He unlocked the door and left without looking back, leaving Taehyung standing there shirtless and shaking, the taste of him still on his lips. Taehyung slowly pulled on his tank top, his mind racing. Jungkook had broken. He'd finally completely broken. The kiss had been real, desperate, full of years of repressed want. But the guilt had been stronger. Taehyung leaned against the wall, a slow smile spreading across his face despite the ache in his chest. He'd cracked the armor. He'd seen what was underneath. And now he knew exactly what he was dealing with, not indifference but fear. Not lack of desire but too much of it. Jungkook was fighting himself, not Taehyung. Which meant this was far from over. If anything, it was just beginning. 3 days after the gym incident, Jungkook avoided Taehyung completely. He left for the hospital before Taehyung woke up and came home after he was asleep. He took his meals in his room. He was a ghost in his own house. Taehyung knew this couldn't last. Their parents would be home from their trip soon, and they'd notice the tension. Something had to give. So Taehyung formulated a plan. If Jungkook was going to retreat into guilt and denial, then Taehyung needed to remind him exactly what he was denying. And if direct confrontation wasn't working, maybe jealousy would. The idea came to him on Wednesday morning when he remembered Jin's offer to help with his law studies. Jin, Jungkook's best friend, handsome and charming and utterly safe because Taehyung had zero interest in him beyond friendship. But Jungkook didn't know that. Taehyung pulled out his phone and texted Jin. "Taehyung, hey Dr. Jin. Is that study session offer still open? I could really use help with constitutional law." The response came within minutes. "Jin, absolutely. I'm free this evening if you want to grab dinner and go over some cases." Taehyung, perfect. I'll meet you at the hospital around 6. Jin, it's a date. Smiling face with smiling eyes. Taehyung stared at that last message, guilt twisting in his stomach. He wasn't trying to hurt Jin or lead him on. He just needed, He needed Jungkook to see, to react, to admit that this thing between them was real. He spent the rest of the day preparing. He showered and styled his hair carefully, applied just a hint of lip gloss to make his lips look fuller, wore jeans that hugged his ass perfectly and a soft sweater that slipped off one shoulder. He looked good. He looked like someone going on a date. At 5:30, he drove to Seoul Metropolitan Hospital with a container of his mother's homemade kimbap, the perfect excuse to seek out Jungkook. The hospital was bustling with the evening shift change. Taehyung navigated the familiar corridors toward the surgical wing, the container in his hands. But before he could reach Jungkook's office, he heard a familiar laugh. Dr. Kim Seokjin was standing near the nurse's station, talking to a resident. When he spotted Taehyung, his entire face lit up. "Taehyung, you're early." Jean bounded over, his smile warm and genuine. "And you brought food? You didn't have to do that." "Oh, this is actually for Jungkook," Taehyung said. "My mom made it, but I could share." No, you should give it to him. He's been living on coffee and spite for the past 3 days." Jean leaned in conspiratorially. "He's in a mood. Fair warning." "When isn't he?" Taehyung laughed, but his heart was racing. "Is he in his office?" "Surgery wing reviewing a case. Want me to show you?" "There you are." Both of them turned to find Jungkook standing in the hallway, his white coat pristine, his expression carefully neutral. But his eyes were fixed on where Jean was standing close to Taehyung. Close enough that it could be considered intimate. "Hyung," Jean said cheerfully. "Look who brought you food. Your mom must really love you." "She loves everyone," Jungkook said flatly. His gaze flicked to Taehyung, then away, like looking at him hurt. "You didn't have to come all this way." "I was in the area," Taehyung lied smoothly. "And I have dinner plans nearby, so I thought I'd drop this off." "Dinner plans?" Jungkook's voice was carefully casual, but Taehyung caught the slight tension in his shoulders. "With me," Jean announced proudly, slinging an arm around Taehyung's shoulders. "I'm helping this genius study for his constitutional law exam. We're making it a regular thing." Taehyung watched Jungkook's face carefully. For just a second, something dangerous flashed in his eyes, something possessive and angry. But then it was gone, replaced by polite disinterest. "That's good. Jin Hyung is an excellent tutor." "I know, right?" Taehyung leaned slightly into Jin's embrace, testing. "He's already been so helpful. And funny. I never knew studying could be so fun." Jungkook's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, we should let Jungkook get back to work," Jin said, squeezing Taehyung's shoulder. "Taehyung, I need to grab my stuff from the locker room. Meet you in the lobby in 10? "Sounds perfect." Jin walked away with a cheerful wave, leaving Taehyung alone with Jungkook in the hallway. The silence stretched between them, heavy with things unsaid. "Here." Taehyung held out the container. "Mom made extra." Jungkook took it without touching Taehyung's hands, maintaining careful distance. "Thanks. Tell her I appreciate it. Tell her yourself. You've been avoiding home." "I've been busy." "You've been hiding." Taehyung stepped closer, lowering his voice. "From me. I've been maintaining appropriate boundaries." Jungkook's voice was cold, clinical. Something we both should have done from the start. Appropriate boundaries, Taehyung repeated slowly. Is that what you call what happened in the gym? Appropriate? Jungkook's eyes flashed. That was a mistake. Really? Because it felt pretty intentional to me. It felt like 9 years of wanting finally breaking through your ridiculous self-control. Taehyung, Jungkook glanced around the hallway checking if anyone was listening. Not here. Then where? You won't talk to me at home. You're avoiding me everywhere else. Where am I supposed to? Nowhere. Jungkook's voice was firm, final. We're not supposed to talk about it anywhere because there's nothing to talk about. It was a mistake and it's over. You're a coward, Taehyung said softly. I'm being responsible. You're being scared. Taehyung smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. But that's okay, Hyung. You keep telling yourself it was a mistake. Keep pretending you don't want me. Keep hiding behind your walls. I'm not. I'm done trying to break through them. Taehyung stepped back, creating distance. You want me to move on? Fine. I'll move on. He turned to leave, then paused, glancing back over his shoulder. Jin's really great, by the way. Funny, smart, attentive. And he actually wants to spend time with me. He saw it. The flash of pure rage that crossed Jungkook's face before his control slammed back down. Have fun on your date, Jungkook said, his voice like ice. Oh, I will. Taehyung's smile was sharp. Thanks for the blessing, Hyung. He walked away, his heart pounding, very aware of Jungkook's eyes burning into his back. This was either the smartest thing he'd ever done or the stupidest. He was about to find out which. Dinner with Jin was actually enjoyable, which made Taehyung feel even more guilty about his ulterior motives. They sat at a small Italian restaurant near the hospital, Jin explaining legal precedents with the kind of enthusiasm usually reserved for sports games or gossip. He was animated, funny, making Taehyung laugh genuinely as he used his breadsticks as props to demonstrate a particularly complex constitutional argument. And that's why the Supreme Court ruling was absolute bullshit, Jin concluded, biting into his makeshift prop. Any questions? Yeah, Taehyung said, grinning. Where were you when I was actually in class? You make this way more interesting than my professor. It's a gift. Jin leaned back in his chair, studying Taehyung with an assessing look. So, want to talk about what's really going on? Taehyung's smile faltered. What do you mean? Come on. I'm not stupid. Jin's expression was kind but knowing. You're using me to make Jungkook jealous. The question is why? Taehyung felt heat creep up his neck. I don't. Taehyung Jin reached across the table, patting his hand in a brotherly way. I've known Jungkook since medical school. And I've seen the way you look at him. More importantly, I've seen the way he looks at you when he thinks no one's watching. He doesn't. He does. Jin's smile was gentle. That boy is so tightly wound, so obsessed with doing the right thing, that he's completely paralyzed. But trust me when I say he feels something. Something big. Taehyung stared at his pasta, his throat tight. Then why won't he just admit it? Because he's John Jungkook. Because you're technically family. Because he's probably convinced himself that wanting you makes him a terrible person. Jin shrugged. The boy needs a push. Sometimes a gentle push. Sometimes. He grinned mischievously. A violent shove off a cliff. You're okay with this? With me using you? Please. I'm flattered to be part of the drama. Jin waggled his eyebrows. Besides, I have a front row seat to watching Mr. Perfect Control lose his mind. That alone is worth it. Taehyung laughed despite himself. You're a terrible person. I'm an excellent person. I'm just also petty and enjoy chaos. Jin raised his wine glass. To Operation Make Jungkook Crack? Taehyung clinked his glass against Jin's, feeling a weight lift off his chest. At least he wasn't manipulating someone who didn't know what was happening. To making him crack, he agreed. What he didn't see was Jungkook sitting 3 tables away, half hidden behind a menu, watching them laugh and toast with an expression that could have melted steel. Over the next 2 weeks, Taehyung and Jin became inseparable. At least that's what it looked like to anyone watching. Jin picked Taehyung up from campus twice a week for their study sessions. They had coffee in the hospital cafeteria where Jungkook could see them through the glass partition. Jin sent Taehyung funny memes and case law jokes at all hours. Once he even brought Taehyung flowers for acing your practice exam, and made sure to do it in the hospital lobby during lunch hour when half the surgical staff was around. Jungkook said nothing. But Taehyung noticed everything. He noticed how Jungkook's jaw would tighten when he saw them together. How his eyes would track them across rooms. How he'd suddenly find reasons to walk through the cafeteria during their coffee meetings. Was always there. A tightening around Jungkook's eyes. A slight tension in his shoulders. Small cracks in the armor. But he never broke. Never said anything. Never acknowledged what was clearly eating him alive. Until the night of the hospital gala. Seoul Metropolitan Hospital's annual fundraising gala was the social event of the season. Taehyung had been invited as Jin's +1, purely platonic obviously, but it'll be fun and the food is incredible. Taehyung had dressed carefully. Black suit. Fitted perfectly to his body. White shirt with the top 2 buttons undone. Hair styled with just enough product to look effortlessly perfect. A silver chain around his neck that drew the eye to his collarbones. He looked devastating and he knew it. Jin picked him up at 7, looking equally sharp in a navy suit. Damn, Taehyung, you're going to cause a riot looking like that. That's the plan, Taehyung said with a grin. They arrived at the hotel ballroom to find it already packed with doctors, donors and hospital board members. Crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead. A string quartet played softly in the corner. Waiters circulated with champagne. And there across the room was Jungkook. He was talking to a group of senior surgeons. Looking impossibly handsome in a black tuxedo that fit him like it had been painted on. His hair was swept back from his forehead, revealing the sharp angles of his face. He looked sophisticated, powerful, completely in control. Until his eyes found Taehyung. Their gazes locked across the crowded room, and Taehyung saw the exact moment Jungkook's careful composure faltered. His eyes widened slightly, traveling down Taehyung's body and back up, something dark and hungry flickering in their depths before he controlled it. He's staring, Jin murmured in Taehyung's ear. Like you're the only person in the room. Good, Taehyung murmured back. Jin laughed and slung an arm around Taehyung's shoulders. Come on. Let's get drinks and mingle. Make him work for it. They spent the next hour circulating through the party. Jin introduced Taehyung to everyone, his hand frequently resting on the small of Taehyung's back or his shoulder. They laughed together, their heads close, looking for all the world like a couple. And Taehyung tracked Jungkook the entire time. His hyung was trying to maintain his usual professional demeanor, but Taehyung could see the tension in his body. The way his eyes kept finding them across the room. The way his jaw would clench when Jin touched Taehyung. The way he gripped his champagne glass just a little too tightly. "He looks like he's about to commit murder," Jin observed cheerfully. "This is amazing. I've never seen him this worked up. Maybe we should." "Dance with me," Jin interrupted, pulling Taehyung toward the dance floor. Taehyung let himself be led onto the floor. Jin pulled him close. Respectably close, but close enough that anyone watching would see intimacy. They moved together easily, Jin humming along to the music. "He's watching," Jin said softly. "And he looks absolutely murderous." Taehyung glanced over Jin's shoulder and found Jungkook standing at the edge of the dance floor, his eyes fixed on them with an intensity that made Taehyung's breath catch. He wasn't even pretending to pay attention to the conversation happening around him. He was just staring. "I think you've succeeded," Jin continued. "Question is, what are you going to do now?" Before Taehyung could answer, Jin spun him out dramatically, then pulled him back in, and this time he pulled him close enough that their cheeks nearly touched, close enough that to anyone watching, it would look like they were about to kiss. Jungkook moved. He crossed the dance floor in long strides, his expression thunderous. When he reached them, his voice was ice. "Jin Hyung. May I cut in?" Jin's smile was absolutely evil. "Of course, Jungkook. Taehyung, I'll be at the bar if you need rescuing." He stepped back with a theatrical bow, leaving Taehyung standing there as Jungkook took his place. For a moment they just stared at each other, the music swelling around them. Then Jungkook's hand settled on Taehyung's waist, his other hand taking Taehyung's, and they began to move. This was different from dancing with Jin. This was charged, dangerous, every point of contact between them feeling electric. Jungkook held him firmly, possessively, closer than was strictly appropriate for stepbrothers. "You look like you're enjoying yourself," Jungkook said, his voice low and controlled, but Taehyung could hear the edge beneath it. "I am. Jin Hyung is great company." "Is he?" It wasn't a question. Jungkook's hand tightened on Taehyung's waist, pulling him incrementally closer. They were pressed together now, chest to chest, and Taehyung could feel Jungkook's heart hammering. "Jealous, Hyung?" Taehyung asked softly, tilting his head to look up at him. "Why would I be jealous?" But Jungkook's jaw was tight, his eyes dark. "I don't know. You tell me." Taehyung's free hand came up to rest on Jungkook's shoulder, his fingers playing with the hair at his nape. "You've been watching me all night. You're imagining things." "Am I?" Taehyung let his body press even closer, eliminating any remaining space between them. "Then why are you holding me like you don't want to let go?" Jungkook's breath hitched. His hand on Taehyung's waist slid lower, resting just above his hip, his fingers spreading possessively. "You're playing a dangerous game. Only if you're willing to play." Taehyung tilted his head, his lips nearly brushing Jungkook's jaw. "But you're not, right? Because I'm your stepbrother and it was all a mistake and we have boundaries and—" "Shut up," Jungkook growled. He spun them suddenly, dancing them toward the edge of the floor, then through a side door that led to a darkened hallway. Jungkook backed Taehyung against the wall, his hands on either side of his head, caging him in. His eyes were wild, all his careful control finally completely shattered. You want to know if I'm jealous? Jungkook's voice was rough, raw. I'm fucking furious. Watching him touch you, watching you laugh with him, watching you look at him like... He stopped, his jaw clenching. You did this on purpose. Yes, Taehyung admitted, his heart racing. I did. Why? Because you needed to see it. To feel it. To stop lying to yourself about what this is between us. Taehyung reached up, his hands cupping Jungkook's face. I'm not interested in Jin. I've never been interested in Jin. There's only one person I want, and he's too busy being noble and responsible to let himself want me back. Jungkook's eyes closed briefly, his whole body trembling with restraint. Taehyung? Tell me you don't want me, Taehyung challenged. Look me in the eye and tell me you felt nothing watching me with Jin. Tell me you didn't want to rip me away from him. Tell me you don't think about that kiss in the gym every single day. I can't. Jungkook's voice broke. Heck, I can't. I think about it constantly. I dream about it. About you. About all the things I shouldn't want to do to you. Then stop fighting it. Taehyung's thumbs brushed over Jungkook's cheekbones. Stop punishing us both for feeling something real. You're my stepbrother. I'm a man who loves you. Who's loved you for years. The stepbrother thing is just an excuse. Taehyung pulled Jungkook closer until their foreheads touched. You're scared. I get it. But I'm scared too, and I'm still here, still trying, still hoping you'll finally let me in. Jungkook's hands came up to cover Taehyung's, his grip almost painful. If we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. Everything changes. Everything already changed the moment you kissed me in that gym. Taehyung smiled softly. We can't unring that bell, Hyung. We can only decide what we do next. They stood like that for a long moment. The space between them charged with years of wanting, of denial, of careful control finally crumbling into dust. Then Jungkook kissed him. It was different from the gym, not desperate and angry but deep and claiming, like Jungkook was finally letting himself have him. His hands slid into Taehyung's hair, angling his head to deepen the kiss, and Taehyung melted against him with a soft sound of surrender. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Jungkook rested his forehead against Taehyung's. I'm still terrified, he admitted. I know. This could destroy our family. Or it could make us both happy for the first time in years. Taehyung's hand slid down to grip Jungkook's lapels. It's your choice, Hyung. But I need you to actually choose. I can't keep living in this limbo where you want me but won't let yourself have me. Jungkook pulled back slightly, his eyes searching Taehyung's face like he was memorizing every detail. If we do this, we do it right. No more games. No more using Jin to make me jealous. No more pretending. Deal. As long as you stop pretending you don't feel this too. I don't think I can pretend any more even if I wanted to. Jungkook's smile was big. You've completely destroyed my self-control. We should go back to the gala, Jungkook said, but he made no move to let go. Probably. Taehyung traced patterns on Jungkook's chest. But I don't want to. Me neither. Jungkook's hands tightened on his waist. Want to get out of here? And go where? I don't know. Anywhere. Somewhere we can talk without an audience. Talk. Taehyung raised an eyebrow. Always so responsible. One of us has to be. But Jungkook was smiling, really smiling in a way Taehyung had never seen before. Come on. Let's go tell Jean we're leaving. They left the gala, Jungkook's hand never leaving Taehyung's back. In the elevator down to the parking garage, Jungkook pulled him close, kissing him softly. I can't believe we're doing this, Jungkook murmured against his lips. They ended up at Jungkook's apartment, the one he kept near the hospital for late shifts, rarely used since he usually stayed at the family house. It was minimalist and clean, very Jungkook, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city lights. How about we start simple? Taehyung suggested. No expectations. No pressure. Just us. Figuring it out together. I can do that. Jungkook pulled him closer, his forehead resting against Taehyung's. I'm sorry I made you wait so long. Sorry I was so stubborn and scared. You're here now. That's what matters. I'm here now, Jungkook agreed. Then softer, I've wanted this for so long. Wanted you. It terrified me. Why? Because you're Taehyung. Jungkook's hands framed his face, thumbs brushing his cheekbones. You're bright and chaotic and full of life. I love you. The words came out rushed, like Jungkook needed to prove he could say them. Taehyung's breath caught, his eyes stinging with sudden tears. Say it again. I love you. Jungkook kissed his forehead. I love you. His nose. I love you. His lips soft and sweet. I love you, Kim Taehyung. I'm sorry it took me so long to say it. John Taehyung, Taehyung corrected softly. I'm John Taehyung. I always have been, even if I didn't use the name. Something in Jungkook's expression cracked open, raw and vulnerable. John Taehyung? He repeated, testing the words. Mine. Yours. They kissed again, slower this time, taking their time to explore. Jungkook walked them backward toward the couch, sitting down and pulling Taehyung into his lap so he was straddling him. Taehyung's hands tangled in Jungkook's hair while Jungkook's roamed over his back, his waist, mapping the body he'd denied himself for so long. We should talk about how this works, Jungkook said between kisses. Our parents, the family, work. Later, Taehyung murmured, kissing along his jaw. We'll figure it out later. Right now I just want this. Want you. Taehyung. Whatever Jungkook was going to say dissolved into a groan as Taehyung rolled his hips, grinding down against him. Still want to talk? Taehyung asked innocently. You're evil. You love it. I do. Jungkook's hands gripped Taehyung's hips, guiding his movements. God help me, I love everything about you. They stayed like that for a long time, kissing and touching over clothes, relearning each other without the weight of denial between them. It was Jungkook who eventually pulled back, his eyes dark and wanting but also concerned. We should slow down, he said, though his hands were still gripping Taehyung's hips like he couldn't bear to let go. Why? Taehyung's lips found his neck, biting gently. We've waited 9 years. I think we've been slow enough. Because, Jungkook's head fell back, giving Taehyung better access. Because I want to do this right. Not rush it. Make it mean something. It already means something. Taehyung pulled back to look at him. But I get it. We have time now. We have all the time in the world. Jungkook smiled, pulling him down for another soft kiss. Stay tonight? We can just be together. Sleep in the same bed. Wake up together. Take this one step at a time. I'd like that. They moved to the bedroom, climbed into bed, and Jungkook pulled Taehyung against his chest, arms wrapped securely around him. This feels surreal, Taehyung murmured into the darkness. Like I'm going to wake up and it'll all be a dream. Not a dream. Jungkook pressed a kiss to his hair. This is real. We're real. Promise. Promise. Jungkook's arms tightened. Jungkook tilted Taehyung's face up, kissing him softly. Go to sleep. We'll deal with everything else tomorrow. Everything else, meaning their parents, their family, the complicated reality of their relationship. But for now, wrapped in Jungkook's arms, finally exactly where he'd wanted to be for 9 years, Taehyung let himself just be happy. Good night, Hyung, he whispered. Good night, baby, Jungkook murmured back. And for the first time in years, they both slept peacefully, the war between want and should finally over, replaced by the simple certainty of being exactly where they belonged. The end. Thank you for waiting very long time for me finally uploading this part. I appreciate your patience and understanding. Special part is coming. Love you all.